again, everything about, spirit work is intent, right? Is it your intent to be a good person? Is it your intent to release this stuff? Is it your intent to, right? Because if you don't, then you're holding on to a piece. It's like people die and they don't let go. Their intent is to hang on. And next thing you know, you got more ghosts running around trying to figure out what to do.
Today, we're joined by someone with one of the most unique combinations of experiences that we've ever had on this podcast. He's an author, veteran, Native American holy man, paranormal investigator, and storyteller, D. Paul Fleming. He's a U.S. Navy veteran, a Heyoka, I think I'm saying that correctly, a healer, and seer who has spent decades helping people confront the unseen world, from mischievous entities to dark forces that have even put his own life at risk. He's also the author of The Mysteries at Widnam Inn, a series blending humor, the supernatural, and real spiritual insight. D. Paul doesn't just talk about the spiritual world, he lives it, investigates it, and walks people through healing. D, first, I wanted to thank you for your service to this country. And secondly, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate the intro. Every time I hear that stuff, I'm like, man, I hope the knothead that's on this show can live up to those credentials.
Great to have you. Great to have you, D. Paul.
Don't make me pull my Heyoka out. We'll have some fun with that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to get into this. A lot of your bio, when I was reading about it before we started communicating to bring you on, I'm not familiar with all of it, and I'm pretty sure the audience is probably not either. So I was hoping you could walk us through some of these things. So my first question for you, D. Paul, is what actually does it mean to be a Native American holy man? What are some of your responsibilities, your calling, and some misconceptions that people may have about that?
That's a lot packed into one question.
That is a lot,
right? So let me. I'm not avoiding the question. I answer questions directly, or I say I don't have the answer. But let me start off by asking a question. What do you think? What comes to mind when the term Native American holy man is mentioned? What does that do for you?
For me, I'm picturing right. So I didn't do a ton of research about it because I wanted to hear it directly from you. But if you ask me directly, I think of a shaman or somebody that is one of the elders in the tribe that people come to for spiritual guidance and wisdom.
Yeah, and I think of Tecumseh's brother, the prophet, who could see the U.S. cavalry coming and was good at helping Tecumseh. That's why Tecumseh was so tough to get at the end. So that's who I think of. I think of the prophet. Maybe.
So all of that is fair. Okay. If you're inside Native circles, that's a conversation that stays inside of Native circles, and the information inside those circles will never leave. Okay. The general population knows maybe 1% of Native American beliefs and how they interact with the spirit world. Chief Sitting Bull was a holy man. Okay. And he had the vision after he took 100 bits of flesh out of his arms to see the cavalry, falling like rain upside down. Okay. So that your general overview of a Native American holy man is pretty accurate, more accurate than most people. Okay. But in an essence, you've just said what's in my bio out loud. Okay.
Right.
The part that trips people up is the Native American community stays very quiet. I'd like to use Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee as examples, right? You never heard Muhammad Ali give up the secrets to how he trained to be, I am the greatest, right?
Right.
And he was flat out. He was absolutely the greatest, period. Okay. Same thing with Bruce Lee. And then what happened? He started opening his mouth and his life ended, right? Did the spirit world have enough of him telling, secrets out of circle? I don't know.
That's powerful. I mean, when you think about it, the fact that keeping it inside and I don't even know which Indian tribe we're talking. I know we did interview one guy from the uh, the Navajo, and simply because he was willing to go on the record about skinwalkers, but he still just again he kept that real tight. He kept that real tight. And we got a little out of him, but that was about it. So I'm going to ask the question: what native, what tribe? Let's see.
So to follow up to what you said, Navajo. Have you bumped into Granddaughter Crow?
I have not, but I understand that
Right?
that.
Man, you want to talk about an interview that'll knock your socks off? This is one brilliant woman. Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
Her name is Granddaughter Crow after her grandfather. Okay. But her Dutch name is Dr. Joy Gray. She's got a PhD in business leadership and so on. She spent a few decades in the corporate world before going back to her roots and being a Native American um, healer, shaman, medicine woman, holy woman. I mean, I could put all of those titles on her, and she is a part of the Navajo Nation. Again, the Navajo Nation is it's a big place.
Yeah.
Okay. And talking about skinwalkers, I've never seen, and again, I don't want to overstate my position. All right. And I certainly don't have a wealth of folks inside, the American reservations, if you will. Granddaughter Crow is the one that put the title of a seasoned holy man in front of me. And, when that happens, it's a tricky time in my life, at least, because to have such a title is an honor that you can say is terrifying, but you can also say comes with an enormous amount of responsibility, right? And to get it from her, meant a lot to me because I hold her in very, very high regard.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
When I asked her why are you telling me that I've earned a title of a seasoned Native American holy man, and she went on to tell me about the things that I've accomplished in life, and some of which we hadn't talked about between her and I. So I know that the spirit world was channeling pieces of that through her. So it's kind of like people who are reluctant to accept compliments, which I am. Okay, I'm always reluctant to accept compliments.
Sure.
But if you don't accept the compliment, you're truly insulting the person offering the compliment. So, you have to get to a point in life where your ego is no longer a factor, certainly
Right.
not a key factor, but no longer a factor in your decision making and your process and in what I do, because it's not about me. It's about the ability to do what I've been born in parts to do and trained in other parts to do. And it ain't about advancing me. So again, to try and close that, when that title was settling upon me, I noticed myself that I didn't smile, I didn't smirk, I didn't feel the same thing as when the military tacked a ribbon on me or a stripe or something
Right.
along that lines. That was great pride. Okay. The sense of overwhelming responsibility is what was kind of washing over me as I was accepting mentally and spiritually accepting that honor. But again, it came with a lot of work. It took a lot of work. A lot of work.
D Paul, I can relate from being a pastor. I didn't become a pastor as a chosen profession at all. It's the last place I would have went. It was a calling. It was it was sacred. So when you get to that point, then it's hard. If anyone ever gives you a compliment when it comes to that area, you just don't want that. You're just doing what you feel that God has called you to do, and so in my case, and so I'm sure in yours, it's the same thing. It was a sacred thing to instead of like you and Paul Jr. were both in the Navy. You guys chose that one. You might have, I think you were called too to go into the service, okay? But both of you are Navy men, okay? And so I'm very appreciative of that. So, but I want to ask a question also. Heyoka, Am I saying it right?
Yeah,
What did that mean?
that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, before I dive into Heyoka, let me ask you a question, Pastor Paul and the disciples. Pastor Paul and the disciples. I'm liking that title.
That's good.
Okay,
It might work.
That's good.
Pastor Paul and
Yeah.
and the disciples.
Okay.
We're on the podcast today with WNBC and Pastor Paul and his disciples, baby. Buckle up for an hour's worth of fun, excitement, and a little bit of blessing because it's coming your way.
We might
How
have
can you
to,
not have fun with me on
we
your
might
show?
snip that in at the beginning.
We may have to put
Right? Right? I mean, you got sponsors here? Man, I am great with sponsors, baby.
right?
No
Okay.
sponsors here.
Man, only guy who can write the book titled A Date with Suicide, addressing 50 plus veteran suicides a day. Okay. And do it with splashes of humor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you read my book, Mysteries of the Wind of Men, I'm talking about some wild stuff in the spirit world, and I can throw enough funnies in there to make people chuckle throughout the book.
Right.
Anyway, back to my point, Pastor Paul, on the last topic, titles, right? For me, I felt the weight and the responsibility of the spirit world now looking at me and no longer kind of looking with me. Okay.
Yep.
And all of a sudden I felt the responsibility of, I don't just answer to my wife or my, whatever. Holy crap. Now I've got to truly answer to the spirit world, all my guides, all the white light beings that are around me, the baby Jesus, now I've got a, something that somebody that I have great value for is telling me that I'm in this position. So with the spirit world now looking at me and me accepting that role, I would venture to say, Pastor Paul, that it's like you were saying when that title of pastor was placed upon you. I would guess you would first say, I'm doing, and all of a sudden now I'm being looked at, right?
Right. Right.
Because now once they give you the title, you're supposed to have all the answers,
Mm.
Yeah. And,
right? And I don't. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm able to answer many, many difficult questions. I don't have all the answers.
no.
And that's part of the challenge. And at least if I can look back at the spirit world and say, man, you didn't tell me anything more, so I did the best that I could, right? And if I rely on the judgment of the spirit world around me, I tend to keep walking a better path. So in hindsight, accepting the role of pastor, the title, Heyoka, seasoned holy man, and doing it with such reverence, right? That I'm not going to let the spirit world down. I'm not letting the baby Jesus down. Okay, I'm just not. All right. Now that's what I say to myself constantly. I don't tend to say it out loud very often. But that's how I kind of feel about earning that title. I did the same thing in the military. I'm sure when you were in the Navy there, disciple Paul Jr.
That's right.
Okay, that you had the same warm and fuzzies, but preaching the God's will and spirit and all that comes with a whole different price tag.
Right. And so, Deepak, I wanted to ask you because just thinking about your background and then talking about granddaughter Crow bestowing that title on you. And it kind of goes back to before we started talking about even it, directly to that question. We were talking about the humility of, Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee and yeah, that all kind of goes into, you accepting that title, right? It's not, and also talking about, not a lot of things are revealed about Native American heritage or what's going on within the reservation. But I want to know more about that. And I don't know how much of that you can actually lead on because unfortunately, as we all know here and everybody listening, Native American history is not taught in public school. It's just kind of passed over and we're pilgrims and great conquering, the natives is a great thing. No, it's not. Like that's
No.
the way the history is presented. And, I want to know more. And afterwards, I'll ask you for a few book recommendations as well about that. But I wanted to ask, first of all, granddaughter Crow, how did you meet her? Are you guys part of the same tribe or how does that work?
All right, so let me try to get the end of that first. So
Yeah.
I don't know how I bumped into granddaughter Crow. I don't remember. Right, but it was, I don't know, decade more.
Okay.
Right. I kind of I kind of rely on spirit world to kind of keep putting the stuff in front of me that I'm supposed to bump into, and when I don't act right, and I have to bump into it 2 or 3 times, finally get slapped upside the head, to say, "Stupid, you're supposed to call this person." So, I'm not entirely sure how I bumped into her. I just know it was, instantaneous from the first time we connected to present, okay? There's something about her that I resonate with, and I can understand so much of what she says, but in the same breath, we have, um concepts and ideas and beliefs that are absolutely opposite of each other.
Mm.
So you would think we'd be on the same page. Well, that's just gibberish. No two people are the same. No two people can have the same ideas. No two people can get along perfectly. And if two people can't, how the hell are countries and nations? And I mean,
Yeah.
that's why you have free will, right? It doesn't say everybody's will. It says free will to be who you are. For Granddaughter Crow, she just resonates. She still does. She resonates with me deeply, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for her, both in what she accomplished in the white man's world and in the Native man's world, because she's 50% Dutch, 50% Native American. And I'm embarrassed to say that I can't quote her, her two family lineages off the top of my head. Born to the I can't remember which one she's born to, and you know, born from. Oh well, she'll slap me later. Oh, she'll send some bad jujus after me. Yikes! Yikes! It's gonna send a skinwalker. Hey,
That's good.
hey. So, did I answer your question, or did I fumble around on that for an hour?
No, you did. I mean, I was kind of monologuing a little bit at first, but I also wanted to ask you, part of the point of the monologue was a lot of people don't know a lot about Native American heritage, and I was curious of you. You speak about your Christian faith as well, and I don't know how those two worlds either harmonize or is there tension between the two.
Well, let me ask you. What do you think?
I'm not. I honestly don't know enough about American heritage
So,
that I
what
would have
is
an
your
opinion.
understanding of the Native American, the history of the United States and the Native American? What's your position? What is your memory? What did
Ooh.
school tell you?
Oh, what does school tell me? Well, that is well, school doesn't tell me a whole lot, honestly.
All right. Well,
It's
who's to blame for the plight of the Native American?
um wow. Who's to blame for the
But
what is the word that you
it
should use?
depends on the perspective, I think. I mean, if you asked a Native American, they'd say it's theirs because they were taken over or conquered or whatever. If you ask the white man's world, um, he would say he would probably say it's ours. I would. I mean, because
So,
Mm.
what would you consider white?
I don't know. I mean,
Are French?
I'm part Cherokee and part
Are,
Irish. I don't know what to do. I'm
are the French white?
some
Are the
of them are,
Spaniards?
not all of them. No, I mean it's. I mean
Right.
again,
Are the
and
Spaniards white?
some of them are, and some of them aren't. Yeah, I mean,
Well, let's do a real brief, short, quick 500-year history.
Yeah.
Who landed on the east coast of the Americas? The Spaniards.
yeah, it was
Mhm.
Ponce de Leon, right? I mean,
Who landed in the northern part of Americas? The French,
French.
right? The English took over the east coast of the U.S.
That's right.
Spain took over what? The west coast,
Yep.
Central America, which includes Mexico, I'm guessing, okay, and South America. Wait a minute. The Spaniards took all of South America, all of Central America, Mexico, the West Coast, Texas, pushed into close to Louisiana. Well,
Yep.
that was where the French owned it,
We're the French.
right?
Yeah.
So the French owned what? The Louisiana Purchase,
Right.
which
Mhm.
was the heart of the United States, which went right through the Plains Indian tribes. Okay.
Mm.
The Spaniards owned Texas, Mexico, California, right? And the English were kicked out in 1783.
Right.
They brought slavery to this country, not the Americans. The Americans just carried it on for 100 years and then got rid of it in 80 years, whatever the number was. Okay. But once they bought the Louisiana Purchase in the first term of Jefferson, okay, in the early 1800s,
Right.
bought it from Napoleon, and then sent Lewis and Clark to take a walk. Okay. Then what happened? Then we went to war with Spain and took California, but the entire South American continent is still controlled by who? Not America.
No, not America.
The original people who took over from the natives in there. I don't hear people having that debate. I also don't hear people
No.
having the debate of why did the Sioux and the Pawnee have such a bitter, warring relationship? Okay, because my ancestors, again, my grandfather jumped reservation, claimed white, and joined the Navy.
Mm.
Okay, rode submarines through World War II and retired in '65 as lieutenant commander. He's buried up in Fort Snelling, Minnesota. Okay, that's a full-blood Native American.
Right.
His mother, my great grandmother, jumped reservation and gave birth to him off reservation in the North Platte River. Right, it packed her up, shipped her back. Right, now those are their stories. They're the ones that got me to this point. Now, what am I supposed to do? Go backwards? Go. You know, what would have happened? Listen, massacre is not cool. It's just not. But it's been going on both sides of the wire for forever.
Forever.
Okay, so when somebody wants to have an honest conversation about what happened, listen, my ancestors were some of the greatest warriors out there, and it's in my blood. Right?
Right.
We lost some wars. We won some wars. Okay, so was the United States. So was every other country on the continent. It all comes around and goes around. Now you look at what's going on in the world, and everybody kind of wants to go back to this kinder, gentler way of life, and it just doesn't work. You know what happened to Native Americans when politics intervened inside a tribe? They moved. They packed up their teepee and took a hike.
Yeah.
Okay, and started their own sub band of a sub band of a sub band. Okay, that's why there's so much diversity out there and so many different tribes. Few people understand this, and few people are willing to talk about it, and I understand why. Okay, and I'm not downplaying the brutality of what happened in 1890. On December 15th, Sitting Bull was murdered. Okay, in the wee hours of the morning. 14 or 15 days later, the massacre at Wounded Knee happened, where 300 or 400 Native Americans were massacred. Right, and they just revitalized the medals of honor that were issued to those soldiers. Okay, are those sticking points for me? Yeah, damn right they are. But again, I need to move forward. Okay, sitting on the past, about life in the past, all of that. Okay, for a period of my time, I always said, "Well, my grandfather jumped reservation. Why didn't he stick it out and become a blah blah blah?" Right? You got to move forward in life.
Right,
Again,
right.
I'm not telling other people what they have to do. I'm telling you what I had to do. So I better rephrase that. You got to move forward in life. I have to move forward in life. Okay, I can't keep dwelling on the past because it's not helpful.
No, that's true.
Now, by the way, Apostle Paul,
Yes.
you jumped the king cheese here, Mr. Pastor Paul, when he asked about Heyoka. You didn't let him get his answer.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
that's
did
true.
the answer.
I'm keeping score here.
I'm wanting that answer because it says you're using it as a Heyoka identity. Is there a sacred clown? Can you help us understand what that means?
Yeah, I was born as a Heyoka. Okay, it's not something I inherited or I was gifted to me or I taught myself. I was born to be a Heyoka, and in its simplest sense, the sacred clown is a great 2-word definition. Historically, if you read about Heyoka, they'll ride through a village backwards on their horse. For me, it's more about not being part of the herd of sheep, or herd of horses. Where it's time to turn left and everybody turns left. I want to know why. Why are we turning left? Okay, so in my time in the military, you can't question orders, right? Mentally, you can. You just, if you want to stay out of Leavenworth, you just do what you're damn well told.
Mhm.
Okay,
Oh,
right. But I always I needed to know why, right? And to me, at the heart of being a Heyoka is asking fundamental questions that most people don't ask. Why are we packing up and moving? Why are we doing this? Why are things the way they are? Why am I the way I am? Right. So it's about getting into environments where you can shake up the status quo and get people to think outside the box, view things from a different way of viewing things. Right. We're stale when we constantly repeat ourselves and do the same thing over and over. And we're fresh and moving forward, when we shake things loose and get people thinking. I'll close out with this. When I was a sophomore in high school, this one teacher said something in front of the class, and it just made no sense to me. And I can remember doing this. Now, if I had a notepad and a pen, I probably would have written down some notes, but I was not a very good student. Okay. And I'm watching this guy and I'm looking around, and everybody else in that classroom is writing notes as fast as he can. He just kept drawing away. And everything he said, was resonating with me as absolute BS. Okay. So then he stops, pauses, look around the room. Okay. Nobody asked him anything. And I said, yeah, I don't agree with that. And he goes, finally.
I'm just
I-
waiting for some.
What do you mean, finally? You are the only person who just challenged what I said. Now, the reason I'm doing this is so that you people, the whole class, understand. Don't believe what people tell you. Figure it out yourself.
Hmm.
Question everything, right?
Yeah.
So in that moment, he was being a Heyoka, getting people to see
Got it.
things in a different way.
Wow.
I like that. I like that.
By the way, if I get too long-winded, throw your mic at me. Okay, grab your mic and shake it and say,
No, you're good.
Okay.
Because I mean that wouldn't have been my interpretation. I don't know about you, Pastor, of
No,
what
I
a
didn't know.
Heyoka is.
I really didn't know. I mean, and that's
Yeah.
great. The greatest teacher is getting someone to question things and learn it.
Yeah, but you also have to be damn good looking, and I carry that well, right? Okay. They tell me I am the greatest looking man in the history of my AARP club.
Okay. Well,
But
let me
of course, there's only 2 people in my club, me and my wife.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Let's move into this area and see if your good looks helped you with this. And that is you take on or you encounter in the spiritual world, in the spirit world, encounter with poltergeist, dark entities, or threatening demons, we would say in Christianity, people's safety. Okay. Why do you go into that area? Is that part of the calling or is that part of the curiosity?
No, no, I wanted nothing to do with what I am and who I am. I spent the early part of my life rebelling against it. I mean, the things I saw at a young age, you know, is terrifying, and and it sticks with you. You know, especially when you don't have anybody to explain it to you.
Right.
And it's hard to explain, but I'm here in part to challenge darkness, right? And that's a dangerous path.
Yep.
Okay. Every time I go out there to take something out, okay, listen, I have to depend 100% on the white light beings around me, the angels and all the things I have for protection. And I have to absolutely trust them that what I'm getting into, they're going to be able to protect me and get me out of. Okay. Again, I have my responsibilities, right? I don't get to ham and egg this thing and go, oh, yeah, I got an angel around. Let's go have some fun because you'll get slapped real fast.
Yep.
Okay.
Hmm.
And when you've tasted pure evil, it's life changing, you know. And when you see things that terrify most people and it doesn't terrify you anymore, or even make you afraid, you've taken a step forward where you have the ability to go into this spiritual warfare with the confidence, belief, and faith that my part of this battle will be victorious. And again, I'd love to tell you I'm this powerful guy, but I'm not. I'm a hollow bone. I'm a conduit that moves God's light, Great Spirit's light. Whatever needs to work through me, works through me. My job is to be the go-between between the spirit world and the living. Kind of the definition of a shaman or a holy man or whatever title you want to throw out there.
Well,
I'm happy to tell you more about the dark stuff. If
oh
that doesn't
yeah.
satisfy you.
Well, no, I think we're going to get into probably a little bit of both of it. I also heard you have a podcast, I think with Joe Ruse. Shout out Joe Ruse about the
Go ahead!
about the gray light, I guess, which is what you guys were referring to it as well. My question for you was, what's the first major and actually I wanted to say this too, Deepal. So I was kind of upset, and I don't know if you reached out to this podcast. I'm not going to even mention them about they kind of were super disrespectful with you. It almost seemed like a challenging interview, but regardless, I'll probably edit that part out. But anyway, my question to you is, what was the first major? What's that?
I wouldn't edit it out.
All right.
Right. We're putting
We're
putting places of challenges on purpose.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't like that podcast. As a matter of fact, it's the only one I haven't been invited back on. Okay. And I asked the spirit world why. Why did you put me in front of these people?
Hmm.
Okay. And they told me why. Still don't like it, but I respect it and I understand it. At the end of the day, the impact that I had on that particular podcast will help, guarantee, will help others, okay, see through that person's
Right.
position. Okay. So remember, sometimes we're called to go to places that we just don't understand. Sometimes it's just to have your light present at a certain place, maybe a certain time. Okay. So remember that. I mean, there's
That's
more to it, but that's one I try to remind people when they say, "Man, that sucked. I really wish I had blah blah blah." I said,
yeah.
"No, no, no, don't do that. Look for the reasons why you were put in there. What did you learn from that?" Again, we don't learn from winning. We lose everything from getting our backsides handed to us.
Right. No, that's very true. And I mean, that's what I got out of it, but I don't know. I don't think that everybody sees that way as well. I think that that audience probably wants to do gotcha interviews all day long. So, but I got the, no, he's actually bringing up some things that you probably never thought about. So I thought it was interesting myself.
So from
So,
my position, I could
yeah.
tell how badly I pissed that guy off. Okay. It was intensely obvious when I went like when he said, "Do you have any final words?" And I said, "I do. Keep the faith, keep moving forward." And I watched his entire existence drain from his face. Again, I see a lot of stuff around people. Okay.
Right.
So when I said those words, it was almost like a spiritual high five. Hey man, that was pretty cool. That was a nice one. Right. Again, I didn't do anything except I do the same thing all the time. But he
Right.
didn't get to me. And that really upsets people who don't have faith. And the question is why? Well, because their vibration is way down here. Okay. God's vibration is way the hell up here. And in order to connect to white light, you gotta raise your vibration. And his vibration is down here. It is what it is. He's just got a long, he'll keep coming back here to this earth for lifetime after lifetime until he figures it out. It's
Right.
not my path, it's his path.
Well, so I mean, so my question for you then is, with that, so dark, or you refer to it as white light, dark light, gray light. How do you, so you have the ability as a seer, right, to see the supernatural in the world around us that most people cannot. I wouldn't say that nobody else can do that. Obviously, that's not true. I mean, Pastor and I had a conversation about this as well. Of you could even have different, descriptions or definitions of it. I think this is maybe in lines also as possibly remote viewing as a seer. But I wanted to ask you directly, as a seer, how do you discern what's supernatural, psychological, or environmental before stepping in or doing some of the work that you do?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I have to be asked. Okay. I see dark stuff around people all the time. All right. I've had another vet recently reach out, sent me a photograph of an AI generated image of what he sees in casing. It looks like he's, being sucked down a tar pit. Now I see what's happening to him, and I've seen this around countless people.
Mm.
So my response to him was, if you want my help, you have to declare it. Okay. Because if you don't declare that you want my help, then there's nothing I can do. Right. So that's kind of my starting point. The Long Island medium, she walks up to people in grocery stores and so on and so on. That's great for her, but it's not what I do. Okay. And I don't disparage anybody who does whatever they think is best. For me, it works differently. There's a lot of rules and, you know, universal laws that I got to follow. Cause no harm, cause no interference.
Right.
So it kind of starts there, right? Remote viewing, I do that often. Okay. And it's not it's not like they show you in the CIA movies where, this guy sees this image and all this stuff comes through. It doesn't work that way. Okay. Gotta be careful what I say here.
Sure.
Um, yeah, I understand, I understand remote viewing, and I think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Just so you know, every now and again, I can hear inside my head where, there's only so much I'm supposed to be saying. I'm not doing that to be elusive. I'm doing that to comply with, the titles that they've given me. Right?
Mm-hmm.
People have to figure out their way forward. Remember, what did Jesus do? He showed up and fed 5,000 people, right? Loaded them up with fish, had the greatest fish fry in the history of the beaches of Israel, right? In the history, the greatest
Yeah.
fish fry ever.
Man. Yeah.
And what happened the next day? Those 5,000 people showed up with another 10,000 people. There were 15,000 people looking for their handout. And what did the baby Jesus say? I told you, nobody would go fishing. Did you learn your lesson yet?
Yeah. Got to teach them
Right?
how to fish.
Nobody went fishing. They all came back with their friends. Where's mine? You don't learn anything by giving people the answers. So I'm constantly trying to weave, these conversations into, something that's reasonably smart. I hope I come across that way. Okay, again, I
Sure.
said reasonably smart. All right. But what makes them, everybody out there, draw your own conclusions. Me giving you the answers doesn't work. Okay. You coming to your own answers opens you up to the spirit world and your inner voice.
Let's on that subject. And you brought up, Paul, the supernatural or the psychological or environmental,
Right.
and you're asking him how can he discern between the three potential.
I'll answer that.
Okay.
Say, but you got to understand. Disciple Paul is chawing at the bit to ask about 500 questions all at once.
Yeah.
Okay, he is
Oh,
desperate
no.
to know a ton of things.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That's true. That is
Right.
very true.
He wants answers, damn it, and we're going to give them to him. Okay,
Yeah.
That's exactly what he's doing.
so I'm not a great judge of evil or darkness. Okay,
Mm.
I see it. Okay, but it doesn't resonate with me as evil or dark or how negative it is until enough time passes that I can figure out what it is. Okay, because they do a great job of masking themselves. All right. Now my wife and again, I've been through things where I've seen it at such a nasty level. I guess I should say down here, right? That if you ever want to know the story of the darkest thing I ever saw, that I'm happy to tell you that, but that's where my gauge is. So looking at everyday darkness, demons and whatnot, doesn't really resonate with me. I can see it, sense it, know it. Okay, but I don't know for a fact that it's evil. My wife, on the other hand, is a phenomenal gauge at this. We walked into a property one time, old 1700s building, farmhouse, and so on. And when we were going into the property, I noticed this hawk was buzzing around. I wasn't there to do anything other than help my wife look at the property, so I wasn't in holy man mode, right? And I'm looking up at this hawk, and I'm like, barking at me for. And I kind of listened, but I didn't. And as soon as I stepped across that threshold, I went, oh crap, that bird was warning me, man. Because I could feel I saw the scatter, I saw the clouds and the stuff. And my wife, when she stepped across that threshold, go, oh no, we're not. Okay. She grabs my arm and I said, that bad? She goes, oh yeah, that bad, oh, that bad.
Yeah.
So we walked to the left, walked up this half set of stairs into this kind of small attic space. In the original part of the house, which was got to be older than 300 or 400 years. And I could see this trickster, okay, a low, medium to low level demon. They kind of dress up in these things to try and fool you. And he had 3 tethers, and 2 of them were to kids. Now I'm confident that those kids were white light beings, so I can see and sense that, but I still can't get a sense of how dark this entity is. So I have to trust my wife, right? And she says it's bad. I said, okay, and again, it doesn't phase me. After another minute or two, she had to leave. She couldn't take any more of that energy. Now, again, I have so much protection around me, that it's hard for things to get through. So I have to do certain things. And I don't want to say more. Remember, Muhammad Ali never gave away his secrets, right?
Right.
So anyway, I'm not the greatest gauge of darkness, but here's how I manage it. White light beings will tend to stand their ground and stare at me. Dark entities will flee. I went into an emergency room, an ICU once, to see this girl that got hurt pretty bad. And as soon as I walked in the room, I could see this puff come out of her. Now she's lying like this. She saw me. And I see this puff come out of her. Okay. And I see it. And I look at my wife and she doesn't flinch. So she's not seeing it or sensing it. Okay. And then at the same time, I see another dark entity materialize. And man, as God is my witness, it looked like the Marlboro man. Remember the Marlboro commercials?
Oh yeah.
The cowboy hat He had his leg up against the brick wall in this ICU, and his knee was out, and his leaning up against this thing, almost saying to me, almost daring me to, say hello. Right? I forgot to plug the computer in, guys. Sorry.
That's good.
Right? And now my old hands are shaking, so I can't get the damn thing plugged in. What a mess! What a hot mess! Anyway, so this poor woman in the ICU, I can see that there's two entities, and I'm not getting that it's white light. I knew it wasn't, but I need confirmation. Okay, and I wasn't asked to remove that stuff, so there was nothing I could do. But I did say a prayer for her and wrapped her in light and so on. But that's just daily for me. Everywhere we go. I was leaving a hospital the other day, and my wife's the elevators were closing. It was just her and I in the elevator. Elevators closed, and then they do when people stick their arm through.
Yeah.
Well, the elevators went back open, and as soon as it does, as soon as it's reopening, my wife says, "Tell me that's not a ghost." Okay, I said, "All right, I won't tell you." She says, "Was it?" I said, "It is." Okay, but I only saw the bottom half of it, literally from its waist down, walking into the elevator. Right.
Mm.
So I just put my hand on my wife and kind of wrapped her in light, and she was cool. But it turns out that was a doctor that still wants to help patients.
Wow.
Anyway, that's some stuff I see daily. Did I ever answer your question?
I think so.
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah. It's
If they made a movie about me, it would be The Rambling Man.
That's a great song.
Somebody
by the
shut
way.
this clown up.
That's a great song.
Great song.
Well, so I'm curious though. So again, so it's hard for me and probably the audience as well. I was going to ask you step by step, but how does your daily world look for you? I mean, do you constantly see the supernatural around you? Like you just said, like, your wife was like, "Was that a ghost?" You're like, "Yeah, it was." Do you see entities like that all the time? Does it just come to
Yes.
you? Or,
Yes.
okay. Does it, okay. So it just kind of mixes in with, physical us, myself, pastor, and Deepal. And then can you see, I don't know. I don't know if it's too poignant of a question, but like, can you see things around you or in your room or
It's kind of
camera here?
kind of like
Yeah, so listen, I'm not bashful about any questions, so put them out there.
you're walking around in a constant state of discernment, not looking for discernment.
Right.
You just have it. That's what I'm hearing you say, Deepal. That
Yes, I have to do the opposite. I have to shut it off. I have to push it
Yeah.
back. I have to block it out. Okay. And then, I mentally open back up. All right. Now, how? Man, it takes forever. It took me forever. I mean, forever. When I was a kid, I used to see this woman, when I wrote the book, Steps to Crazy. Okay. If you ever want to read, survival and resilience, and this is my early life. Okay, up to the age of 14. You want to read an inspiring story, right? Well, when I was a child, I used to see this. I still see her. Okay, I can see her right now. I see this woman in this white gown, and she's so full of blood, and it's pretty vile. And I can see the stab wounds in her, and she's constantly doing this. She's pointing at Crazy. Okay, now who's Crazy? Well, Crazy is the name I gave the stepfather that I had to deal with for 14 years of my my first 14 years of my life, or so, right? But the bottom line is, she was telling me that he murdered her,
Wow.
and she's staying with him. Okay, now I've met people who are afraid to die, but that crazy bastard, man, was he terrified to die. Okay, I'm not, never have been, right? But he was, and I understand why. Okay. Now he's a gray spirit who I've got a whole, from the baby Jesus on down, making sure that rat bastard doesn't ever get near me again. He's reached out, I apologized and asked for all this stuff. And right, as a Christian, supposed to forgive and forget, right? Well, I'm not as good as the baby Jesus. Okay. That's a trait I'm still building on.
Right.
But I don't see it happening in this lifetime, forgiving him. Okay, it was just too brutal, just too absolutely brutal. What I went through to just say, okay. Now again, for those of you looking out there, listening out there, I'm telling you, you have to forgive people so that it's off of your soul. Okay.
Right.
So I've forgiven what's happened to me by doing this. I've accepted it. I've learned from it and I understand why. Now, understanding the why frees me of that burden. So I did it a very long way. The easy way to relieve yourself of that trauma is to forgive. Okay. Because when you do, you truly release it from you. Let me say it again. I went a very long path to release it from my existence. Have I completely released it? Nope. You can see it, sense it, feel it in my words, my disdain for that rat bastard. Okay. Again, you bump into pure evil. Do you forgive the devil? Listen, I understand what the Bible says. I understand baby Jesus, right? But again, I'm not the baby Jesus. Trying. Got a long way to go.
Well, I think it's a fair analogy that, forgive and forget. It's just not that simple. It depends on the levels of the darkness. And there's some levels that if they cross, there is no coming back. And if God is willing to give you a line that you cannot cross to come back, then you can understand why humans say, nope, that line, you crossed the line, it can't come back from. So it's okay. All right. It's okay.
I live my life that way, Pastor Paul.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? When you put me to a point, I say it to point blank. Okay. Careful.
Careful.
You cross that line.
You cross that line and there's no coming back. Well, let me ask you a question. So you take on, people invite you. I'm going to ask you this question. Do people invite you when you say you have to be invited in? I agree with that 100,000%. And let's say someone invites you to come because they're having the demons, maybe the abuse they've been through, maybe the war they've been in, maybe the hauntings that they are feeling. And do they come contact you and say, can you come and help discern this for me and tell me what I'm dealing with and how I can be relieved of it? Do you get those kind of calls?
Yes. Yes. I worked with a vet who, the guy hadn't seen in 40 years. Okay.
Date with suicide.
He read this book on the airplane coming back from San Antonio, Texas, from a funeral for another shipmate, again, who I haven't seen in 4+ decades, who ended up killing himself. Right.
Yeah.
So he was the 6th or 7th guy on a crew of 120 who's now taking their own lives. And those are the ones we can verify. Well, this particular vet had reached out. He read my book on the plane on his way home. And he had said, your book stopped me from killing myself. And I said, great.
Wow.
Right. And that was it. And I had to wait for him to ask me for help. And then he started, going down a path. And I said, listen, and I'm not going to use his name, but he said, you have to ask for help. So when you're ready, reach out. Okay. And he did, but he didn't want to address the 4 corners of our existence. Okay. The only way I can help you is if you understand that the 4 corners of your existence have to be in line and balance. Your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual. All 4 of those beings have to be addressed. You have to figure out how to balance them, how to release whatever it is you need to release from each one of those things in order for you to walk back from that ledge. Okay. Again, it doesn't matter whether it's a ledge of suicide or it's a ledge of depression or whatever it is, anxiety. Right. So it took me about 15 months. Right. The last piece I did with him was the spiritual part, because this guy was a borderline atheist. His wife wasn't. She was a hardcore Christian, church every Sunday, all of it, all that stuff that a Christian woman does and, loves her church and so on. When I went and cleared him, his house, his wife said to me that at the end, she had said, I made the declaration and I, did the protection and shut it down. And as soon as it got quiet, this flock of birds flew from the neighbor into their yard. She started crying. She runs to the window and looks outside and says, oh, dear God, there hasn't been a bird in our yard in years.
Wow.
When she said that, I looked at my wife and that was cool, because I was told the birds were coming, but I'm like, so what? right? There's birds everywhere. I didn't know that there were no birds in their yard. She said she'd put out bird feeders and, nothing would attract them in there. Okay.
Yeah.
In the midst of when I cleared her again, she's a hardcore Christian. So, some of the beliefs I have don't resonate with people. So I do what I can to kind of, balance that. Right. But when I was clearing her, I could, she was just emotionally, it's a long road dealing with veterans. Okay. I married a saint. All right. But it's a long road married to veterans. And I could feel and see how much she was hurting. So I called out to the Circle of Love and asked them to send her immediate, healing, immediate attention. Right? Wrap her in your arms and let her feel God's love. And as I'm halfway done clearing her, she turns to me and starts shaking. Her knees give out. And I had to grab her, and I had another guy there and my wife, and they grabbed her, and she says, "Oh my God, they're hugging me. They're hugging me. I can feel the love." Right?
Mm.
There's nothing more rewarding than doing that for another living person. Okay. Now I was so engrossed in what I'm doing that I don't pay attention to a lot of stuff that the spirit world does around me when I'm doing these ceremonies and clearing and cleansing and so on. Okay. So I didn't really see it. My wife said she felt it. Okay. But it changed this woman's life, period, full stop. And again, she was already a big time Christian. But what it did more so was it helped her husband. Okay. Because once I got that dark entity out of there, you could feel the entire house just shift. And this is a common theme of when you can get this stuff out of people's lives, whether it's them, buildings, property, whatever it is. Okay. When I cleared him, he slept for a couple days. First time in decades he'd slept. And again, that's kind of a byproduct. Okay. I got to be careful.
Yeah.
I'll close out with this. I said to him, listen, I've done everything I can do. Okay. You have to find your own way through faith. You have to find something. Okay. I'm not telling you to go to church. I'm not telling you to read the Bible. I'm telling you, you have to find something that resonates with you so that you can maintain that balance. Okay.
Yeah.
Because if one gets out of whack, the other ones do too. Right. I think that was a Saturday. He went to a church on Sunday. The following week, he went to another church, and then he's now going to this church religiously. Okay. I don't know what church, but it's not his wife's church, which I find funny. Okay.
They didn't like it. Yeah.
That's kind of the power of, power. What a dirty word, right? That's kind of the ability that I have to move the spirit world through me to help people.
Sure. I think that's a powerful story. Maybe he doesn't like his wife's church actually, or either that, or maybe he just wanted a different place to worship. I don't know.
One thing I know for sure is that the way people are raised in different cultures, different churches or denominations or way of worship resonate better with certain people. So that, that's a it's a determination people make, like I feel comfortable here. This makes sense to me. I feel good. Not that they're negative toward the others. It's what D. Paul said. You got to find that place.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. Apparently he found that place, and he found
that resonates with you.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It worked for him, and he found the church that really worked for him. So it was good.
And that doesn't mean that everything that church does is going to resonate with you.
No.
Okay? A lot of the stuff the Catholic Church doesn't resonate with me. I'm not going to badmouth the church.
Right.
Okay. The church my wife goes to has one great pastor and one douchebag. Okay. I wouldn't give the guy 5 cents. Okay. The last time I listened to one of his sermons, he said, "You're committing a sin if you don't pray for priestophiles." My wife had to tie me down to the pew. I was furious.
Yeah.
Okay. So I waited till he was done, climbed up, looked at him and said, "Bull, away." In the middle of the aisle. Whole damn church. My poor wife. Oh, my poor wife.
Unfortunately, I think
tell me I'm committing a sin if you don't tell me who to pray for. You out of your mind? I'll pray for whoever I damn well pray for.
Yeah. I know some churches I'd love to send you to. Okay. Just that's all I want to say. Just to
that would be fun. Because
they would react to you. That'd be amazing.
Well,
let me say it to you like this. I've been on podcasts where the podcast hosts have said to me, finally, "I have to tell you, I'm terrified of you." And I said, "I know." I know. Okay. Kind of like Apostle Paul's kind of worried about what he's going to say at times.
Well, I got questions for you.
But some of these guys,
Yeah.
are terrified. So I say to him, why? They say, I don't know. One guy was in Canada, right?
Mm.
And I go, what are we, 1,000 miles away? And he goes, yeah, but I was apprehensive. I was truly terrified. And now that I get to know you, man, you're a nice guy. And I said, don't say that out in the airwaves, man. I don't need people knowing that, right? So the question is why? So put me in those churches. I'll be happy to go say hello. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, I don't have to do a lot of the work. I'm a hollow bone. When I get around people, their soul reacts without me saying a word.
Mm.
I can walk into a room, and you pick it anywhere you want. Half of those people will love me and half of those people will hate me on the spot. And it's almost constantly 50-50. Okay.
Wow.
The
Wow.
question is why? Well, I don't know. What happened when Jesus walked up and started talking and looks across the room and says, unclean spirit, you're not welcome here. Right?
Yeah.
His soul called out what's inside of people. And that's what happens when I go places. Okay.
Wow.
My soul, my light, and the stuff that's around me, okay, makes people react in ways that they don't want you to know. So their secrets are no longer secrets. People can't lie to me. When people talk, I see bubbles. Okay. I know when somebody's telling the truth or not, man. I would be the greatest poker player in the history of poker if God would let me see the damn cards. And I can see the cards from time to time. Okay. I just can't see them enough to be consistent. Right? Throw me out on a blackjack table.
Yeah.
Your turn, Paul.
Well, so yeah, I do have questions, Paul, and I need my answers. So
That's good. How am I doing, guys? You having fun?
yeah, this is great.
Yeah, sure.
I wanted to get more stories, but before that, for myself and context for the audience too, because I think it's a little bit confusing. Can you give us just a brief, like a step-by-step process? I know there's probably not the same for each situation that you're dealing with. Like the example you just gave us was a friend of yours that, your book helped him not commit suicide, which is a wonderful thing. I'm really excited to read that book too, by the way, Date with Suicide by Paul. But for example, if somebody wanted you to come to their house or property because they're have some sort of poltergeist going on or demonic activity, supernatural, paranormal activity, and they wanted you to cleanse their property, could you give us briefly how would you do a step-by-step process for that? What does that look like?
So the first thing I'm going to say is what I'm going to describe is a general and generic overview. Okay. How I do these things is different every single time. Okay.
Right.
It truly depends on what I'm up against and what kind of forces need to be brought to bear and then how. Okay. Because, if you rip a Band-Aid off, it's going to hurt. But if that Band-Aid is glued on and you're yanking, you might pull something out that you weren't supposed to pull out. So you got to be careful. And I do mean careful. All right. So in its most general sense, all right, I'll do a lot of prelim work, some of which people would call remote viewing. Okay. I set up spiritual protection from a distance for myself, for others. Okay. Again, I got to be careful.
Right.
We don't want the enemy known, right? And they're always listening. So, I set up protection. And then when I go to the property, I want as much information as I can get. But here's where it gets crazy. I don't want too much information. Okay. I don't want to be swayed or pulled in any direction. All right. I want to see what's there. And I don't want it tainted by, the living's interpretation. Okay. So I try to gather as much spiritual, energy reads, what's going on. I don't do histories. I don't go back and look at the property's history or the people's history. I don't pay much attention. It's just, to me, it's, it just doesn't factor into what I'm doing. Right. Why am I there? And I try to focus on that. Why? What are they asking me to accomplish? Right. And a lot of times what people are asking you to accomplish, they have no idea what they're asking you. Right. They don't know what a possession is. They're lost. Okay. So they're asking you in truths and half understandings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to kind of decipher that and figure out what am I, what am I up against, right? So you go to the property. There's certain ways you approach a property or a person. Okay, but again, you put up a lot of protection. You protect the folks that are around you. You make sure that you're pure, or as pure as you can be. Um, you have an exit strategy. Okay, what's going to happen if, and you kind of need to take a step back. All right, and then you prepare. I reach out to everything from Archangel Michael to God Himself. All right, my first step for me is to stand in the light of Christ. Period.
Mm.
People ask me, what's my first line of defense? Same as yours. I stand in the light of Christ. Show me a more powerful entity, and I'll be happy to stand in that light of Christ, or their light. Right.
Yeah.
So Archangel Michael's been a great, dare I say, friend. I call and he comes. But again, if I called him right now and said, "Hey, Archangel Michael, come on in. We're going to have a 4-way conversation with these cool dudes.
Yeah.
Pastor Pete and the Apostle team," right? He ain't coming. He's not coming. Right? Don't cry wolf.
No.
Okay. But when I go to spiritual war, I am dependent and trust that He is there. Not his groupies, not his extras.
Mm.
It's not his day off. Okay. It's Him. And I've seen Him time and time and time again. Every time, no. But I trust that if I can't see Him, there's enough power around me, enough white light force around me that, we're fine. I'm a
Wow.
big sage guy. Okay. So, how the priests walk around with the
Yeah.
smoke,
I was curious about that.
that
Incense.
they laugh at Native Americans and say, "What's that sage for? That's crazy stuff." I don't know what's in your canister that you
That's
blow around at weddings and funerals and
incense.
so on. Isn't that supposed to? What was that, myrrh? Is that what that? Wasn't there three old guys that showed up on donkeys 2,000 years ago, back of a manger or something?
Yeah.
Drop some sprinkles of sage or wait a minute, what was it? Myrrh, right? This
Myrrh.
magical myrrh that will evaporate dark energy. Oh, you believe in that too? Yes, I do. It's also, you can do that with sage, sweetgrass, tobacco, and cedar. Okay. The 4 elements that the great spirit gave us to ward off darkness. Okay. I'm a huge sage guy. There's folks I work with that do what I do that just say, it's all bullcrap. Okay.
Well,
right?
real quick,
It all
and
resonates with us. Go
can
ahead.
I cut you off real fast? Though? What does the sage do? Because I was always curious about that too. Like not spiritually. Is there a physical property or a chemical property of it that does something?
You could say that. Okay.
Okay.
I use the examples of people say if a skunk sprays you, to squirt yourself with lemon juice.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now you're gonna smell like a lemony skunk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't the tomato juice, right? Dunk somebody in tomato juice, these old wives' tales. Do they work? Never worked for me. Okay.
Garlic.
But if
tie
right?
garlic around people.
Vampire.
Right. So I've got 2 cloves on my cross right now. No, I'm kidding. So, but what sage does is neutralize darkness. How? I'm going to tell you my uneducated answer.
Okay.
Chemically, it neutralizes negative energy and reverts it back to white light. Or just the scent of it is enough to repel, kind of like a skunk. A skunk can get, shot a mile away. Squirt that nasty smelling stuff, and you and I can smell it from a mile away. Right? Well, if you're in the spirit world, depending on your strength, sage, sweetgrass, cedar, and tobacco are the 4 elements that we use to neutralize darkness.
Right.
Kind of moving along. Does that give you a good enough answer or no?
No. Yeah, it does. It does give me a good enough answer because I don't think that it's there's certain viewpoints when you start talking about a supernatural world and spiritual world, right? And there's some people that, for instance, the podcast that you were on that we mentioned earlier, they look at things so they can't believe certain things because they can't see it, or there's some sort of evidence, quote unquote, that they need, and it's usually a sense property. It's not usually a spiritual property. So your answer that you gave me, right, it probably doesn't answer the question perfectly for somebody that needs these, physical evidence, to actually uh, convince them, I guess. Because when you talk about using the sage for spiritual cleansing, it's not just about a physical property that you can put in a textbook and have, a scientific explanation for it, because you're not accounting for the spiritual world that it's actually reacting on. I don't know if my understanding of that does that make sense to you as well, to you, Paul?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have to say one thing to you. I don't now nor ever will I try to get people to understand. Okay. It's up to them to walk their own path. I'm just a messenger, right?
Mm.
I'm giving out the information and things that I see, things that resonate with me. People take what works for them, and things that I say that they're not ready to hear or they don't believe in. Look, it's all good. It's all good. We all have to walk our path. And here's the beauty of it. More times than not, when people agree with you and say that works, that's where their mental process ends. They just say, okay, it works. Now we've
Right.
got another sheep in the herd. People that question whether it works or not, okay, they're constantly bringing it back up. They're constantly debating it, either
Mm.
internally or externally. Remember what I said a little bit ago? People that do what I do, great friends of mine, okay, they say, that sage crap doesn't work. Okay, okay, okay. For me, it does. So what is the intent? My intent, along with the sage, adds power to it. To the
Right.
average person, sage will do what it's supposed to do, but it's your intent behind it that adds the gunpowder, if you will.
It's interesting you bring that up because let's say in some of the things I do, anointing people with oil, it doesn't work
Right?
if people don't believe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So whatever it is, prayer, laying hands, biblically, we can lay hands on the sick, they shall recover. We can anoint with oil and the Lord will raise them up. So in other words, there's different techniques, and what works for one person because of their faith may not work for someone else who has no idea what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think to D. Paul's point, yeah, he's saying you're dead on. Is it depends on the person, the individual, and not only the person receiving, but the person giving.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it has to be the faith has to be among somebody there. Okay, or it won't work.
That's truth to word, Pastor Paul. That is truth to word.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So okay, I'm going to ask you a question also, and that is, have you ever had someone ask you to come and help them, and then they reject you, or the evil reject you? Did the evil ever overtake the situation and say, "Oh no, you can't have this one"? Okay, now we're going to Hollywood here a little bit, but in reality, I know that some people cry out for help, but then when the help comes, then then there's some part of them don't want to let go. Have you ever experienced that?
Well, I'm going to agree with the last part because our human nature doesn't like change, right? Even if it's good change.
Right.
Okay. We're constantly, I don't want to change. So
Yep.
has it ever happened to me? I don't believe so. I don't believe so. But again, you have to commit to, you have to commit before I'll commit. Okay. So, I started at the beginning. I said, you've got to ask. Okay. You have to be at that point, whether it's like someone who's addicted, they say you have to be at the rock bottom, right? If it's a waste of my time if a person, I can't say is doubting, but is reluctant because it
Right.
is their intent. Okay. Again, the hardest thing that I do to get people to understand is you can do what I do. Okay. There's a great book out there, Apostle Paul, um, called Chief Fool's Crow. Okay. He's got a couple of books out. The second book or the third book that's out, um, he made the author promise not to release any of it until after he died. Right. Those are great books to understand Native American spiritualism and healing. Okay, and how it works. Again, it's not going to give you, it's going to give you generals, but it's not going to give you details.
Right.
Okay, but it was a hugely helpful book for me. Again, Chief Foolscrow died at the age of 99, and he stopped practicing healing when he was 90 something. He's, I'm sick of this. Okay, I'm not doing this anymore.
Mm.
And he died, I don't know, 25 years ago. But his books have helped me tremendously in understanding my path forward. Now, I forgot why I got on that rant.
I forgot too. I asked the question. Who asked that question? Did I ask the question?
Yeah, you asked it. No, you asked a question about.
I remember now. It is,
Yeah.
and I understand the answer now. And that was, I said, have you ever had someone ask you for help, and then when you went to give them help, then they rejected?
Yeah, no, I've never had that. But I
because
do a lot of pre-work.
you do a lot
All
of
right.
pre-work so that you in advance, so you pretty well know whether or not that person's at their breaking point.
Right.
They got to be at that breaking point to really kind of ask, hit rock bottom, or I got to have help, relief, or I'm about ready to jump off the edge. You're saying they got to be kind of at that point before you can be, they're all the way in.
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess that's the proper answer in theory. But as I'm thinking out your question and replaying, some things I've done, and there's always that reluctance, even after they commit, So again, I guess that would be like addiction too, right? You
Yeah.
may be at the health center, but still craving whatever it is you want.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I
so
wanted. Go ahead.
I was going to give you an example of a clearing I did where there was, but
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. This is just on my head, but I do want to have that though, because I just want to add the rest of that to the question. So yeah, so some of the steps would be, right. So the person has to fully commit to be able to have you to come in to actually want that to be cleared. And then secondly, you're going to have to do a lot of, I'm just going to coin the phrase, spiritual recon, and kind of set up some things that you need to know about property, what you don't want to know about the property, and then Archangel Michael or Jesus Christ as well as protectors for you before you go in and start to do this work. Is there ever a time within that process, maybe this would probably help Pastor's question a little bit too, where you'll see that this is something that's not best suited for you, and you would refer the subject to somebody else that's able to do this type of work?
So I haven't bumped up against anything that I couldn't do. It comes down to the person's intent. Again, everything about spirit work is intent, right?
Mm.
Is it your intent to be a good person? Is your intent to release this stuff? Is it your intent to, right? Because if you don't, then you're holding on to a piece. It's like people die and they don't let go. Their intent is to hang on. And next thing you know, you got more ghosts running around trying to figure out what to do, right?
Mm.
So for me, Paul, it comes down to their commitment to their intent. But I have to say that every time I've done clearing and exorcisms, cleansing, all of it, the people on the receiving end are still reluctant. You don't walk into these places where the people going, "Yeah, baby, the exorcist is here, the crazy holy man. Let's go, baby." Woo, woo, woo. They kind of open the door like this.
Yeah.
I didn't think you'd show up. Yeah. Here I am. And then I usually say, "There's a ghost behind you. So you better open the door quick." No, I don't.
Well, can you go ahead, give us that example you wanted to give us, D. Paul?
So sometimes the spirit world, people say, how do we find you? A lot of times the spirit world will send messengers to have conversations with me. Okay. So I'll give you an example. This one lady who's been dead for, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years.
Mm.
And out of the blue, she just started showing up. Right. So I can see her right now, she's smiling at me. Okay. I've never broken that connection now that we are. Anyway, she started showing up and saying to me, you need to. And I'm like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I reached out to this person I know and said, listen, try not to freak out, but your mother's here and she's hounding the bloody Jesus out of me. Okay. She's telling me that I need to meet with you guys because you're going to drop dead and there's another person in your family that's under attack. Oh no, I'm sorry. I said your sister's going to drop dead, and you got somebody else in your family's under on attack by a pretty vicious demon, a dark entity.
Mm,
And what I didn't know about the person on the other end of the phone until I could hear the crackles, and I'm like, what the?
right.
Well, she said my mother's been hounding me too, and I can see her, and I'm like, oh shit, man, you got gifts? And she said, yeah, and I'm like, oh, cool. Well, then you can do this.
Right.
Anyway, I went and met with him, and the one of the two daughters, I'd said to listen, if you don't get to the doctor immediately, your lifeline's gone. There's nothing there. So I can see people's lifelines, all right,
Mm,
especially veterans. Okay, I've seen a lot of veterans' lifelines. Anyway, um, I told her she better get to the doctor, or you're going to be dead within a very short period of time.
right.
Well, she's crying, the family's crying, whatever. And then I said, so what is this dark entity I keep hearing about? And then they started telling me about the Ouija board. Well,
Oh,
these
geez.
daughters, when they were kids, were messing around with the Ouija board, and they said we saw it come in. And I said, okay, so it's not here. Where is this? And as soon as I said it, I said, oh, this thing's got you trapped in your house.
Mm,
That's why you're having so many mental health issues,
yeah.
right? And this poor girl, man, she was just like, she was angry. All the things that somebody who's dealing with a demonic possession does. Okay, not climbing the walls or hanging on the ceiling, not that stuff. Okay, but all the denial and anger and blah blah blah. So I started getting the sense of what I'm up against. Again, this took a number of weeks. This isn't call me up and tomorrow I show up at your house. This takes time. Okay, I mean, it really takes a lot of work, not just to prepare for it, but to understand and then look back at the spirit world that's around me and make sure I got the right parts and pieces
Right.
lined up. And again, it's not my call; it's waiting for the spirit world to tell me that the troops are ready. Anyway, we went to this lady's house, and yeah, sure, it was a trickster, and that trickster was raising hell. So my wife and I, it took about 4 hours. We finally got the protection up and all the things done, and then in comes Archangel Michael, and it didn't take it away the way I'd seen more of them taken away. That thing slipped out, okay, before I could contain it in a bubble of white light and get the white
Mm,
light forces to remove it. It slipped out. Okay. And it's
mm,
outside. So there's protection up around this person in her house. And that thing is constantly knocking at that dome of protection I've got up around it. And I've told her, I said, listen, you gotta renew this protection. Okay. It's not my responsibility. I've done what I can, but you have to actively participate in your own well-being.
right. Oh, so when you say trickster, though, is that just like a spirit or an entity that just wants to mess with somebody, or is it
Yeah, I gave him the name Trickster. I don't think I'm confident I can come up with a name, but I'm not sure where I bumped into that name. But I started using that when I was clearing. Um, I can't say who, but I
right?
was clearing somebody. I mean, this is a great story. My wife and I are working in a garden, and I get this 7-foot Native American going, pointing. Okay, and he would just show up, stand in my garden, and just point. And I'm telling you, man, this is 1800s regalia. It was beautiful.
Oh,
Okay,
wow.
and he just keeps pointing. Okay, so next day he's out there pointing again. Next day, and if I look at my wife and I go, "Can you see the native stand there?" She goes, "No." I go, "He's pointing." And she says, "Which way?" I said, "That way." She says, "Telling you need to go take care of." And she said, "Who?"
Mm,
And I'm like, "All right." So I make the call, and I go see this person, and and this is deep inside her, and I mean deep. I've never seen one that deep inside somebody. Anyway, we had to pull back, and we had to take a bigger, broader picture. And when you read the Mysteries at the Wyndham Inn, it
yeah.
talks about the witches of Hampton. Okay. Well, those witches were right across the street from this person that I was clearing. Okay.
Mm,
So I had to go get some more friends of mine and, living friends and bring them in to clear this property first because there was some stuff that's just millions of year old that's in the ground that had, claimed this land. And some of it was cast off from the witches across the street when they came here in the early 1600s and so on. So it became a major undertaking. All right. And this one person who's Lakota trained, and I mean, Lakota trained, he trained me in a lot of good ways. She had said to me afterwards, that was the second toughest clearing I'd ever done. I said, really? And it didn't seem that big of a deal to me. But for her, there was so much stuff that she almost got overwhelmed. And that's why you go there at times with a number of people like-minded who know how to go to battle, how to go to war with the dark forces. So when we got that baseline out of there and, cleansed the property and set up protection and then put up, told the natives that were there that what we were doing and so on, I had to go back and get this thing out of this girl. And that was a fight. And it was the first and I believe only time I was personally tricked. Okay. So I'm looking at this thing and it was dressed up in a top hat and, a tuxedo. And, it really gave the impression that it was a well meaning spirit. Okay. And remember what I said, I can't feel darkness. I mean, I can tell, but I can't feel it. My wife can feel it, remember? Okay.
Right.
So I have to go on these things. But my wife said, she goes, that's not a good thing. That's not a good, she just kept saying it. I'm like, really? And then it clicked. It took about 5 minutes. And then it clicked. I could feel that dark energy. Okay. So the spirit world was opening me up to let me get a sense of what that was. And I went, oh, you little mother lover. You tricked me. And that scared me a little bit, because
Yeah.
I don't get tricked. I think it's the first time I ever really got tricked. So I had to change my tactics. And the crazy part was some of my guides were kind of like tapping their toes, like, like almost like you wait for your kid to stick the fork in the outlet, right? And you go, let's see how close that dumb kid gets. So do I let him zap himself or, you dummy? That's what it felt like. It felt like my guides were waiting for me to figure it out, but not going to let me get close enough where I'd get hurt. Now, is that the truth? I don't know because they never told me, but it's what I'm going to choose to believe. Long story short, took me a couple hours to get that nastiness out of her. And, that thing was pissed. And I mean, it was mad. I mean, mad. Took a lot of work, but got it out of her. She slept for, I think she said 36 hours straight. It was the first time she could remember sleeping
Crazy.
literally a couple hours, but she slept for 36 hours straight, 24 hours. Her husband said in the same spot. She never moved. You had to check her breath, make sure she was alive. That's a common thing though. When I clear people or places, they tend to sleep well afterwards.
Pastor, you
I
got
like
anything?
stories.
Well, I like to say, I want to thank you for your service. We didn't talk much about that, but obviously, I don't know how many years you were in the Navy, but obviously you were involved in some intensity, and I just discern that. But I want to thank you for being your service, for your faithfulness for our nation, and in a time when I think some veterans, if they've had a rough experience or they've had a dark experience or they've had a traumatic experience, some of them come out and they're not as patriotic or they're very upset with their government. They feel abandoned, and rightfully so. So it's good to know that there are people like you who can then help them in their process of trying to say, okay, I served my country. I did everything I could do. I felt like I got let down. I felt like I got abandoned in some ways, but I'm still proud of what I've done, and I still love this nation. And I think that's an area that you probably have a great ability to help some of our veterans out there.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, I do appreciate the kudos, Pastor Paul. Thank you. Okay, but yeah, I'm 100% disabled vet. Navy tried killing me a couple times. Didn't take. I remember one time, being 30 feet above my body, watching them pull me out of the ocean. Never blamed anybody else. I volunteered. Okay, and the first time I thought of suicide was literally leaving the VA. Okay, and realizing how screwed I am. Okay. So I hate the VA. I hate the VA with a passion. They are the worst entity on this planet. Okay. They should dismantle that thing and throw it the hell out. Full stop. Right. Private care for all veterans. Full stop. Full stop.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'd be simple.
I spent 10 years in DC lobbying with a group called Vet First Vet Force, which got Public Law 109-461 on the books, which is the Vet First Contracting Act, which means the VA has to, by law, hire veteran business first. Full stop. Okay. Before anybody else. Under Executive Order 13360, Bush signed it and said all government spending, 3%, I should say, of government spending has to go to veteran businesses, contractors, suppliers. Okay. So, the work
just
we
makes
did there
sense.
was a
Yeah.
fight. Okay. And I mean, it was a fight. Okay. But we prevailed, and veterans are, benefiting from this. And when I say we had to fight, the VA, appealed this through the court system and went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I was in D.C. when the 8 members of the Supreme Court voted 8-0 in favor of what is titled Kingdomware versus the VA. The VA was trying to kibosh the vet first contracting law. And the 8 Supreme Court folks
No.
said, no, it's the law of the land. Full stop. Okay. So, I'm very proud of I'm very proud of my service. Okay. You
Yep.
can't take that away from me. All right. When I was on my I hate God kick for that for a juncture of my life, why me? Why the abuse? Why can't you? Right?
Mhm.
The thing we all go through, right? I hate God. Damn it. I don't mean it. You know what I'm saying? We're on a podcast. Okay. But I was going through that. And the biggest mistake I ever made, people ask me all the time, what's the scariest thing you ever saw? It wasn't clearing or cleansing or doing the work. It was when I had a temper tantrum that I'd had enough. I had enough of seeing what I see and knowing what I know, and being who I am. I had enough. I didn't want it anymore. I was tired of it. Okay. And I said to the spirit world, I got to pause for a second. I'm only telling this story. Please, Lord, I'm just repeating the story. I want all my protection to stay exactly where it is. In the midst of my pity party, I said, enough. And I commanded my free will, God given free will, to push back. Okay. All of his, okay. You know where I'm going with this, right? I
Right.
don't like saying the words. I did it once before.
Yeah. You don't have
And
to.
I watched the white light, my guards, my guardian angels. I watched them drift back.
Mm.
And as they did, now again, you would think this is a long period of time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Woo, just drifting back. Okay. And I could feel the void. And in came this serpentine chunk of nastiness,
Mm.
a tar riddled sludge that I could feel, taste, smell, sense, and know as absolute pure evil. I have never seen anything, felt anything, tasted anything like it before or since.
Mm.
Second 6, second 7, second 8. Now I'm in full blown, oh my effing Lord, did I screw up? Now what do I do? Man, I begged, prayed, pleaded, apologized. I pulled more intent out of the inside of me than I ever have in my life. Okay. Wow, did I screw up? And I begged them instantly. Again, this is less than 15 seconds how fast it happened.
Right.
Okay. And then there was a quick battle to get that thing back out. Right. And as white light came back in, I could feel the battle. And there was that brief second where that thing made it crystal clear. It is coming for my soul. Full stop. Didn't care about this, didn't care about the spirit, didn't care about anything. It was clear to me that it was coming for my soul.
Mm.
God, lesson learned, got it. Never make that mistake again. Okay. And as the white light comes back in, all right, man, oh man, oh man. That was a defining moment in my life. And that's where my red road really took off. Okay. Where I said, okay, all right. So, and I started getting my answers, why was I so abused and so on and so on. And the short answer to all that, when people ask me, what'd you do with your God's pity party? When I started getting answers from within, it became very simple. I was a pretty good military weapon, right? But I was highly trained, and I mean highly trained. So no matter what we got into, we were prepared for it, right? So nothing was a surprise. Well, if
Mm.
God's going to put together a spiritual warrior, he's going to put you through the tests first. And if those tests mean that you're going to be tortured as a child, all right, and you have to figure out how to survive all of these things, that's going to make you a warrior that will do one thing when God calls you in, and that's not quit. Okay? You go into a spiritual battle and you quit, and you got problems. And so do the people you were supposed to help.
Wow.
So you better not quit. And I'm
Nope.
going to tell you something.
No quitting.
I don't quit. I've never quit a day in my life. I mean, I've taken a step back and been, knocked around a bit, but I've never quit and I never will. And that's part of the, the fire of indoctrination from the spirit world, the crap I went through. So now what I'm up against? I'm up against dark stuff that I've got to be a conduit for. Yeah. Walk in
Yeah.
the park, so to speak. Walk in the park, right?
Yeah.
I stand in the light of Christ. Faith, belief, can't touch me, right?
Amen.
Can't touch me.
That's right. Amen.
So D, I wanted to. So you've alluded to and you've shown us actually 3 of your books that you've written. Can you tell us about? Yeah, can you tell us about some of your books and
Where to get them?
Yeah, where to get them, and it kind of looks like it touches a lot of different audiences as well. And if you can
Very
go into
diversified.
that for us,
Very diversified. Yeah.
show us some of your books and then tell us who's it for. There you go.
So this was the toughest book I ever wrote. This talks about my young life. And as I like to say, I was married to my wife for 50 years when I wrote this book. Okay. Now, were we married 50 years? No, she tells me it's closer to 37 years now. But when you factor in the wind chill, okay, it becomes 50. You have to trust me on that, but don't tell my wife that one. All right. When I wrote this book, it took me 2 years. All right. I threw it away 6 times. Okay. When I handed it to her, I said to her, I know I've never told you anything about my childhood, and you're about to find out why. So for the 50 years we've been together, I never said a word. I never said a damn word about my childhood. She sat down and read that book. She couldn't talk to me. When she did, she tried, she'd cry. All right. And this went on for a period of time. And finally, when she could, overcome what she read enough to talk with me, she said, I'm sorry. I never understood the magnitude of what you went through. And I got to tell you, you weren't abused. You were tortured.
Right.
And when she said that, I drew back because people that go through abuse, I don't want to say the word downplay it, but we tend to blame ourselves or, not really look at it for what it truly was. Right. When she said it was torture, it resonated with me in a way that resonates with me when the spirit world stands up and points and says, hey, I need you to do something. Right. Because I never realized it was torture. But when you listen to other people tell me, what they read in the book, yeah, it was torture. So she asked, why didn't you say anything? I'm like, how do you tell somebody that you were tortured by the people that are supposed to take care of you? Right. Okay. So when I released the book, I was expecting backlash, all that stuff. And I never blame anybody. I never will. Okay. My life is my life. I have no complaints. Okay. The people that reached out and said to me, I'm so happy you told your story, and they start telling theirs. I am dumbfounded at the good stuff that book has brought forward. Okay. Well, that book led me to taking on the 50 plus veterans who are committing suicide every day. Now I went and this is a great read, by the way. Okay. Because again, I mixed humor into one of the toughest subjects out there. Well, when I was out of the Navy for a couple of years, they discharged me to VA, and I was retired some years after that on injuries. Anyway, a guy that I served with, hadn't seen him in a couple of years, reaches out. I'm up in Boston. He said, I'm in Boston. I want to connect. I have to talk to you. Okay. And I says, all right, well, Super Bowl's next week. We'll get together next weekend and watch Super Bowl, drink beers, and do what old Navy guys do, right? Tell stories and fabricate and add a bunch of fun stuff and forget about the hard times. And said, all right, so we'll meet next week. Now, again, this is back when landlines were popular. I had a cell phone, but it was one of those bricks, that cost you $2 a minute. So you didn't really call on that too much. Anyway, week goes by, pick up the phone, call the number he gave me. This woman answers. I don't know this woman from anybody. And I say, listen, I need to talk to Randy. She goes, who the f are you? I'm like, Randy called me last week. And he says, he wanted to get together and said he needed to talk to me. And by the way, who are you? And then she starts jawing away. And I finally said, listen, either put him on the phone or I'm hanging up. Right? She pauses and she says, oh, it's you, isn't it? And I'm looking at the phone. I'm like, who is this woman? I didn't use those exact words, but you get where I'm going with this.
Right.
Her next words were, after he got done talking to you, he went out to the garage and hung himself. Don't ever call here again and go yourself.
Wow.
That was my introduction into veteran suicide. Okay. Now that pain haunted me for decades and decades and decades. And when I finally asked why, and I put myself in a position to be able to listen, questions that came back or the answers that came back were stunning. Would you have written this book if not for him? No, I wouldn't have. Now I've had my toes at the edge of the cliff. Okay. And as I opened the book with a story about veterans and buses and so on, you'll get a kick out of it. All right. The opening lines of the chapter 1 start off by saying, how do you tell this story? How do you tell somebody else about your most tender fears, the things that terrify you the most, the stuff that hurts so badly that you can't breathe? That's how the story starts. Now, everything I write is true, period. Okay. All the emotions, all the experiences at the VA and how I managed to survive. Listen, if I didn't have faith, I wouldn't have survived. Okay. That led me to a fun book, Mysteries at the Wyndham Inn. Now, how did this book start? So I don't live far from this place. Okay. This is a real building. It's been around since 1783, this brick building. It used to be 3 stories. Right. But the story behind it is pretty wild. There is a ghost that walks the streets, in the middle of nowhere. Again, we live in the middle of nowhere. Okay. And Wyndham Center is just an old Yankee community. Right. Well, this poor woman back in the mid 1700s was hanged not once, but twice. Okay. And the accusation is that she, had a child out of wedlock and so on, and then left the child in the woods. Okay. Well, that's what the living story was when they hung her. Okay. But they wanted to burn her at the cross at the stake as a witch. But this is about 40 years after the Salem witch trials were kabajed and said, no more burning people at the stake in the colonies. Okay. Well, this poor woman's father had rode to the Capitol and gotten a pardon from the governor. And when she was hung the second time, he had just come over the crest of the hill. He was within musket shot of that noose when it stopped twitching.
Wow.
He fell from his horse, cursed the land and the people. At the same time, his daughter did the second time. And those curses reverberated through the land, the leaves, and the wind for forever. And what they cursed, she is still here, walking the streets, entering these buildings, peeking in people's windows. Okay. Again, these are police reports, fire reports of countless times people have called in saying, the shuttled woman on the side of the road, or somebody's peeking in my window. So that part of the story is very real. The rest of the story comes from people who live there. And here's how crazy it gets. A friend of mine I grew up with that I write about in book 1 of Steps to Crazy showed up at my house on his motorcycle. When you read the book, you'll understand the importance of the motorcycle. He starts telling me about this cat that used to attack him at the Wyndham Inn. Okay. So the main character is a real life person, okay, who used to get attacked by this cat in his dreams. He'd wake up with scratches, no cat in his room. Okay. I asked him, I said, "Did you ever have scratches on your back?" He goes, "Yeah, one time." You should see me trying to explain that to my girlfriend.
Yeah.
Right. So the characters in this book are real. And the story is narrated by a ghost who's been in this building for 300 years.
Wow.
Wow.
I love the cover arts, by the way. I just wanted to point that out to you. I don't know. I haven't read any of these books, but you're getting me excited about reading them. And I want to point people to where we can actually go get them. Where can we get them from, DePaul?
Yeah, Amazon is the best way to get a hold of these things. All my books are on Amazon. If you want an autographed copy, mail me $1,000 in an envelope,
Perfect.
and a pen.
That's the discounted rate too.
Discount, yeah, discount only for this podcast.
I had all that on the website. I don't have the patience anymore. So
Yeah,
Amazon, it's good
you have
stuff.
to
Buy it off
carry-
Amazon.
You'd have to
If
carry
you want a book
inventory.
signing, just reach out. I'm happy to sign a book for anybody.
That's great. Well, so DePaul, I just wanted to thank you for bringing your experience, honesty, and wisdom to the conversation today. Your work, from your service to our country to your healing work, and finally your writing, gives people hope in situations that often feel hopelessness. For listeners who want to explore more of DePaul's world, visit his guest page, which is on our website at paulbegleypodcast.com. Also follow him on social media and check out books on Amazon, as we just discussed. Thank you again, D. Paul, for your service, and it's been a powerful and eye-opening conversation. God bless you.
Guys, thank you much. Keep the faith. Keep moving forward.
God bless.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on the Paul Begley Podcast. New episodes will be released every Tuesday on all major podcast streaming platforms. For a video recording of this episode, you can watch and subscribe on our YouTube channel at Paul Begley Podcast. Hey guys, we want you to connect with us. Follow us on X and Twitter at Paul Begley Pod. We'd love to hear your questions you want us to answer on the show. For additional Paul Begley content, go to our website at paulbegleyprophecy.org. If you've thought about it, we'll talk about it. Paul Begley Podcast.